Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefuhl. This is the Toyota RAV4. It launched in 1994 and since then has become the world's best-selling SUV. It's now in its 5th generation. So, we obviously already know that it's popular, but does that make it any good? Let's take a closer look and find out. So we already know how popular this car has been throughout its history, but from a stylistic point of view, I think it's nice to see that a lot more design elements are coming in with this generation. If you look at the front, we have a very blocky, robust character. This isn't a large SUV, so we really don't want to overstate that. And although we now have an increased height from the ride off the ground, we still have a feeling that there's a little bit of sportiness to the design. The way that we achieve that is through this long cut right throughout the bonnet. So the height is kept still somewhat visually compressed and it doesn't hit you too much in the face all at once. Now, this vehicle is 4.6 meters long or 181 inches. So not a massive change from the predecessor, but as you'll notice, and I think visually it does make a very big difference, 3 extra centimeters on that wheelbase. That should amount to a lot of extra interior space. We'll find out in a bit. And the extra 1.5 centimeters of ground clearance, which really tells us that we do have something that is trying here to be a little bit more rugged in the off-road department. Wrapping around to the back of the car, we can see how that styling has really nicely followed round. So again, these very angular rear lights, I think, are going to divide opinion a little bit. Jonas and I have just been talking though, and I will say, I think that your major challenge at this price point is going to be not wanting to be bland and indifferent. And nothing about this car is bland or indifferent. Now, that's clearly going to mean that some people are going to hate it, but it is visually distinct. And I think that's a real plus, especially for a car at the lower price points. Well, right from the start, when we open up the door, we can see that it has, again, a very distinct, unique styling. Lots of soft touch material being used here, which does slightly uprate the feeling of quality that you get from the interior. I like the mix of both these fake metal elements and the plastics, so it does have a lot of styling there. A lot of people say that when they're talking about their favorite cars, they could tell that car just by listening to it start up. Well, I often think I could say the same about a lot of cars just from sitting in them. And this seat feels very, very much like what I would expect from a Toyota. So it's comfortable enough, it's very practical. I like the adjustability you have. You can get it very quickly and easily into a position that feels right for you. And to be honest, there are a lot of bells and whistles you can put on these things, but when all's said and done, that usually is the most important feature. I think the best way to describe this is it's very much a game of two halves. What do I mean by that? Well, you have the styling and you have the practical use. Toyota are famous for being a very practical utilitarian brand, and you feel a little element in some of the design features here that echoes that. That rubber on the door handles that I mentioned is mirrored on the rubber of these dials. That makes them very easy to grab hold of. Very practical. There's no way you're going to find it difficult to get that adjustment. Given how very visually present it is within the dashboard, I think it is quite important that you like the experience of interacting with this. I don't know, for the latest generation, I think I just would have liked a slightly higher resolution screen. But as you can see there, it's actually pretty responsive, so it has a decent processor powering it, and I'm sure that once you get into using the features, they're all going to be nice and straightforward and easy to use. So this is simply going to be a question of how you feel about having this planted right in the middle of the dashboard. For me, I'm not in love with it, but I think I could get used to it. Do I feel the same way about the driver's cockpit experience? Well, that's an interesting one. You can have many different opportunities to change the information on display here. What you cannot change is the fact that we have the digital display very obviously and prominently inserted in the middle of these two analog dials. So it's okay. It's fine. It's just not a great deal to strike the imagination in any way. I personally, for my taste, prefer when manufacturers go with smaller displays, but high quality and nicely integrated. It does seem to be a lot of the trend is towards having the biggest possible digital land space that you can get in the middle of it. And I just don't know that that's been utilized quite as well as it might have been. This driver's seat is set for me in the front. We always leave it that way so you can get a realistic sense of the space that is in here as it relates to what you've already seen in the front. This seat, however, is set for Jonas, who is over 6 foot and has normal proportions. So if you have a look at my legs versus the amount of room back here, it's a much more realistic expectation as to what you're going to get. And as you can see, even if I did have normal person-sized legs, I'm still going to have plenty of space back here to be comfortable. That extra 3 centimeters in the wheelbase doesn't just result in a lot more comfort in the rear seat of this car, but a significant increase in storage area as well. What you are looking at is 580 litres of load space, and that is 80 litres more than its predecessor. As you can see from my small suitcase, what that results in is more than enough space back here without ever needing to worry about folding the seats down. Standard everyday use, you have a nice thoughtful pocket over here that's just for you to be able to add bits and bobs. That's always handy for a spare container of oil or whatever else you need back here. We've also got a nice 12-volt charge point and its own light. And if we have a look under here, then you can see we have a slight storage area for some tools. Now this is the hybrid, and this actually is powered in electric form by nickel metal hydride batteries, not lithium ion. Why would they do that? Well, it does make the car slightly cheaper to put together. So that's certainly one interesting feature. I can tell you that across the line there will be no diesel models, and there won't be any petrol turbos either. Now, previous comments that have been made about the RAV4's driving experience is that it's nice, if a little unremarkable, but it has been commented that it could have been a bit more robust. And some less than favourable things have been said about gearboxes in the past. Well, with the hybrids, you get this automatic, and that's really very nicely put together as far as the drive is concerned. You can have a 6-speed manual with the weaker petrol if you want to, but I think for most people who are going to own this car, this automatic is going to be absolutely fine. We do have 3 different driving modes here: Eco, Normal and Sport. Let's start off with Normal, see what kind of experience that gives us. I don't think it's going to come as a massive shock to you to hear that this drive is really very nice. Now, I hope you don't mind me using the word nice, but I think you'll probably understand what I mean. There is nothing immediately right off the bat about driving this car that stands out either for good or for bad. On the good side, the power management between the electric and the petrol engine, as I already mentioned, is pretty much completely effortless. You don't have to think about it, worry about it, pay any attention to it whatsoever. And for this car to sell fantastically well, that's clearly very important. So, gearbox. Very comfortable, very easy changes, performing nicely. I'm hoping we're going to get to have a little bit of open road in a moment so we can really put our foot down and find out what this hybrid system delivers when you really start making a demand on it. The seats are performing exactly as expected. As I mentioned in the interior section, I like my seat low down in the vehicle, so that really gives me a nice position on this road. I do feel that increased height of 1.5 centimeters on the vehicle overall from the predecessor. It does make me feel somewhat more dominant on the road, and we have a new increased torsional stiffness in the body, and that makes the car feel a lot more solid in the drive. It really does resonate quality, and it does make you think of driving experiences that you may have had driving more expensive vehicles. Okay, so basically if you punch down, you get pretty much more or less the same experience in any of those modes. Now, it's normal for that to be the case because they want to make sure that you have that power and performance when you need it. But usually the sound profile is markedly different between those driving modes. And in this car, if you put your foot down, it isn't. It's not really a major issue, it's hardly a deal breaker, but I don't know, I think they could have done a little bit better in getting that acoustically to match the experience. As I said, for a vehicle of this size and class, 8 seconds really isn't that bad. And the rest of the drive, comfortable, sturdy, precise. I guess I could be having a little bit more fun. So if I had to pick one word to sum up my experience of driving this car, it's a good thing and a bad thing. Nice. Well, that about does it for us from the RAV4 in Munich. So what do we think about it? Well, there's a reason why this has been the world's most successful SUV. Is it the looks? No. Is it the drive? No. Is it the available options? No. So what is it then? Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? It's price point. This is going to be available in Germany from around about starting $30,000, in America from $25,000. It represents a phenomenal amount of value packed into an overall good package. I'm really impressed to see how much work and effort Toyota have gone into reimagining this to make it feel a little bit more special. This styling clearly is really going to divide opinion. A lot of people are not going to like it, but equally as many, if not more people, will absolutely love what they've done with this. I think they've done a fantastic job of making that design very much wrap around. This car is very distinctive, and I think that's really great at this price point. I would say exactly the same with the interior design. Will it be everybody's cup of tea? Could they have used slightly better materials? At this price point, I really don't see how. So that design, it is quirky, it is different, but you know, the whole car is very, very practical. It feels that way, it looks that way. How about the drive? Well, it's kind of the same thing. It's not going to blow your mind. It's not the most exciting car you'll ever drive. But you know what? It feels solid. It has a lot more stiffness to it than its predecessor. They've really uprated this chassis, and the way that the car handles really puts it in a higher price point than you might naturally expect at first glance. So as a total package, I think this car is fantastic. Any of its individual components by themselves would not be enough to sell me on this vehicle. But when you put them all together, I think it delivers an awful lot of what you want at really a very reasonable price. Hope you've enjoyed watching today. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. Please subscribe, and we hope we'll see you all again soon.